In the theatre of war, death is no longer delivered solely by bullets and bombs. Modern conflicts have birthed weapons so insidious, so terrifying, that their very existence reshapes the nature of combat. From silent poisons to devastating firestorms, the tools of destruction have evolved, not just to kill, but to cripple, incinerate, and shatter the human body in unimaginable ways. Join us as we unveil the most horrible weapons ever used in modern war. Thermobaric bombs, also known as vacuum bombs or fuel-air explosives, are among the most horrible weapons, notorious for their immense explosive force and horrifying effects on the human body, and have been used in conflicts such as the Syrian civil war and the ongoing war in Ukraine. Designed to ignite a highly explosive fuel cloud, thermobaric weapons produce a sustained blast wave that incinerates everything within its radius, and then generates a brutal vacuum effect that ruptures internal organs, causing slow and agonizing deaths. Unlike conventional explosives, which rely on a fuel oxidizer mix, thermobaric weapons disperse an aerosol cloud of flammable material before ignition. This results in a fireball of extreme temperature, followed by a shockwave that can collapse buildings, incinerate armored vehicles, and obliterate enemy positions with unmatched brutality. The longer blast duration makes them particularly devastating in enclosed spaces such as bunkers, tunnels, and urban warfare settings. Thermobaric weapons have been deployed by major military powers, including the United States, Russia, and China. Russia's TOS-1 Buratino multiple rocket launcher is infamous for unleashing entire barrages of thermobaric munitions, creating infernos that leave no survivors. The US has employed thermobaric Hellfire missiles and air-dropped bombs in Iraq and Afghanistan, targeting fortified enemy positions. Human rights organizations have condemned these weapons for their indiscriminate nature, describing their effects as uniquely cruel. Despite calls for regulation, thermobaric weapons remain a terrifying force on the modern battlefield, capable of reducing entire cities to unrecognizable wastelands and leaving behind a grim legacy of suffering. In the unforgiving battlefields of the Pacific and beyond, the Type 11 light machine gun stood as Japan's first attempt at mass-produced automatic firepower. Designed in 1922 by Kijiro Nambu, the weapon was intended to provide infantry squads with suppressive fire following lessons learned from the Russo-Japanese War and World War I. While revolutionary at the time, the Type 11's unique feed system and flawed design would ultimately turn into a liability for soldiers relying on it in the brutal conditions of World War II. The most notorious flaw of the Type 11 was its open hopper feed system, which required 5-round stripper clips, the same used in the Type 38 rifle, to be loaded into the gun. This system allowed soldiers to continuously reload, ensuring an uninterrupted stream of fire, but at a heavy cost. The exposed mechanism was a magnet for dirt, sand, and debris, making it prone to jamming, especially in the muddy battlefields of China, Burma, and the Pacific Islands. Additionally, the weight of ammunition on the side-mounted hopper unbalanced the weapon, making it difficult to handle. Chinese soldiers nicknamed it the bent buttstock machine gun due to its awkward design. Despite these drawbacks, the Type 11 remained in frontline service until the end of World War II, seeing combat in Manchuria, the Second Sino-Japanese War, and in the Pacific campaigns. Even after Japan's defeat, the gun continued to resurface in conflicts such as the Korean War, the Indonesian National Revolution, and the Vietnam War, often repurposed by enemy forces who had captured it. In the heart of modern combat, where chaos reigns and only the strongest survive, the SA-80 stands as a lethal extension of the British soldier's will. A weapon forged in the fires of necessity and precision, the L85A2 and its variations have carved their way through history, dominating the battlefields of Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond. With its bullpup design, this rifle is engineered for brutal efficiency, offering deadly accuracy in close-quarters combat, while retaining the firepower of a full-length assault rifle. What makes the SA-80 a nightmare for its enemies is its sheer stopping power. It delivers high-velocity rounds with a precision that punishes those caught in its crosshairs. Equipped with ACOG or SUA-AT optics, it transforms the soldier into a hunter, capable of engaging targets with unrelenting accuracy up to 400 meters away. When the shadows of urban warfare creep in, the SA-80's compact bullpup frame allows it to maneuver through narrow corridors of destruction, striking with the force of a coiled predator. From the desert seizures of Basra to the mountainous ambushes of Helmand Province, this rifle has left its mark in some of the most merciless conflicts of modern warfare. It has been a weapon clutched by elite British forces in desperate last stands, the steel lifeline of soldiers braving insurgent crossfire and the unforgiving force that turns the tide of a battle in an instant. Unlike conventional explosives or chemical agents, weaponized anthrax operates in the shadows, an invisible killer that infiltrates the human body without sound, without warning. It is the assassin's weapon, the harbinger of dread, a biological time bomb that turns the very air into a death sentence. Anthrax spores are microscopic, odorless and colorless, capable of being dispersed by mere grams, yet unleashing devastation of nuclear weapons. Once inhaled, these spores anchor themselves in the lungs, bypassing the body's defenses as they multiply, releasing lethal toxins. Victims experience flu-like symptoms that rapidly escalate into respiratory failure, internal bleeding and suffocating agony, a fate that no modern battlefield medicine can easily reverse. History bears the scars of anthrax's deadly legacy. The Germans targeted Allied livestock with anthrax in World War I. Japan experimented on prisoners, dropping clouds of spores over Chinese cities. In 1979, a Soviet biological weapons facility in Sverdlovsk accidentally released anthrax into the air, causing dozens of deaths in a chilling preview of what a deliberate attack could achieve. And in 2001, in the wake of 9/11, letters laced with anthrax were sent to US senators and media officers, triggering mass hysteria and forcing a nation to confront the reality of bioterrorism. Anthrax weaponization is the ultimate phantom menace. It kills without explosion, without warning, and without mercy. A silent, creeping horror, mustard gas is one of the most terrifying weapons ever unleashed upon humanity. A chemical weapon designed to inflict suffering rather than swift death, its insidious power lies in its ability to corrode the flesh, burn the lungs, and leave its victims in unbearable agony. First used during World War I in the hellish trenches of Ypres, Belgium, mustard gas turned battlefields into choking, blinding, flesh-melting nightmares. The scars it left, both physical and psychological, haunted soldiers for decades. What makes mustard gas so uniquely horrifying is its stealth and persistence. Unlike conventional weapons, it does not explode. It seeps into the environment, clinging to soil, buildings, and even uniforms. Invisible in its vapor form, it can infiltrate the body through mere contact with the skin or inhalation. Victims may not even realize they've been exposed until hours later. Their skin erupts into painful blisters, their eyes swell shut, and their lungs begin to rot from the inside. During the Iran-Iraq War, Saddam Hussein's forces used mustard gas with merciless efficiency, killing thousands and leaving even more permanently disfigured. In World War II, secret tests exposed soldiers, some unknowingly, to this deadly substance, leading to horrific injuries and long-term suffering. Even today, mustard gas stockpiles remain a chilling reminder of mankind's willingness to weaponize suffering itself. A weapon of torment rather than efficiency, mustard gas ensures its victims endure prolonged agony, a slow, inescapable descent into pain, blindness, and suffering. Few weapons inspire as much fear and devastation as napalm, the fire that clings to flesh, burning everything in its path with no escape. More than just an incendiary weapon, napalm is liquid hell, a substance engineered to maximize suffering, terror, and destruction. Developed during World War II, it quickly became one of the most feared weapons in modern warfare, reducing entire cities to raging infernos and turning jungles into charred wastelands. Napalm's true horror lies in inescapable nature. Once ignited, it adheres to skin, clothing, and even metal, burning at temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius. The fire does not simply scorch, it melts, suffocates, and engulfs. The unlucky victims caught in its blast suffer agonizing burns that sink deep into muscle and bone, while the surrounding air is consumed by thick, deadly smoke, leading to asphyxiation even for those who avoid direct contact. Even foxholes, tunnels and bunkers offer no safety as napalm seeps into every crevice, turning hiding places into fiery tombs. Napalm was rained down upon Japan in World War II, incinerating entire cities in the dead of night. It was unleashed in the Korean War, ensuring no enemy position remained untouched. But it was in Vietnam where napalm cemented its place as one of the most terrifying weapons of modern warfare. The infamous photo of Kim Phuc, a young girl burned by napalm, became the face of the weapon's brutality. Entire villages were wiped out in flames, the firestorms consuming everything with no mercy, no discrimination, and no chance of survival. The mere threat of napalm was often enough to send enemies into a state of sheer panic. A single bomb could turn the ground into an unlivable hellscape, reducing morale to ashes along with everything else. It was psychological warfare at its most horrifying. Even today, napalm's legacy casts a long shadow over history. Though its use is restricted, its reputation as a weapon that brings apocalypse wherever it falls remains unchallenged. Cluster bombs, or cluster munitions, are one of the most indiscriminate and terrifying weapons used in modern warfare. Designed to release hundreds of smaller submunitions or bomblets over a wide area, they create a devastating effect amongst enemy troops and infrastructure. However, their long-term danger to civilians makes them one of the most controversial weapons of war. Once scattered, a large portion of these bomblets fail to detonate immediately, turning battlefields into hidden minefields that can remain lethal for decades. These munitions were first developed during World War II and have since been used in numerous conflicts, from Vietnam and the Gulf War to the wars in Iraq, Syria, and Ukraine. The United States, Russia, Israel, and multiple other nations have used cluster bomblets to break enemy defenses, suppress infantry, and deny access to key areas. In the Vietnam War, the US dropped millions of these bomblets over Laos and Cambodia, leaving tens of thousands of unexploded submunitions that still kill and maim civilians today. Despite their devastating military efficiency, the humanitarian consequences of cluster bombs have led to a global push for their prohibition. More than 100 countries have signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions, banning their production and use. However, key military powers, including the United States, Russia, and Ukraine, have refused to ratify the treaty, arguing that these weapons are still necessary for modern warfare. In the Russia-Ukraine war, both sides have deployed cluster munitions extensively. The United States, despite previously condemning their use, has agreed to supply them to Ukraine, citing urgent battlefield needs. With Russia already using these weapons, Ukraine argues that deploying them in return is a necessary evil to counter fortified Russian positions. The brutal reality of cluster bombs is that they do far more than just kill soldiers. They leave a legacy of death that lingers for generations. Children mistake unexploded bomblets for toys. Farmers unknowingly plough over deadly remnants, and entire communities are trapped in contaminated zones. The silent threat of cluster bombs continues long after the war is over, ensuring that their terror is never truly confined to the battlefield. Buried just beneath the surface, invisible to the naked eye, anti-personnel mines are among the most terrifying and insidious weapons ever devised. Unlike other munitions that unleash destruction in an instant, these devices wait in silence, sometimes for decades, until an unsuspecting victim steps on them. Designed not just to kill but to maim, their purpose is to cripple enemy forces by overwhelming medical resources and spreading psychological terror across battlefields and civilian populations alike. These mines come in two main types: blast mines and fragmentation mines, each with its own nightmarish effect. Blast mines, activated by the pressure of a footstep, obliterate limbs, turning a simple misstep into a gruesome and permanent injury. The victim's foot is shredded, bones pulverized, tendons severed, and if the explosive charge is large enough, the leg may be blown off completely. The cruelest aspect? The mine doesn't always kill outright. Instead, it leaves soldiers and civilians alike writhing in agony, ensuring that rescuers and medics are also drawn into the kill zone. Fragmentation mines unleash a more horrifying fate. Devices like the S-mine launch into the air before detonating at chest height, spraying hundreds of razor-sharp steel shards in all directions. The result? Bodies torn apart, limbs severed, faces permanently disfigured. The US M16 bounding mine is particularly gruesome, with lethal fragments flying up to 200 meters, turning an entire battlefield into a death zone. From Vietnam to Afghanistan, Cambodia to Bosnia, Angola to Ukraine, these weapons have been used to deny access, fortify defences and terrorise civilians. In places like Cambodia and Laos, where millions of mines were laid during Cold War conflicts, people still lose limbs decades later while farming or walking to school. In Ukraine, both the Russian and Ukraine forces have deployed landmines, ensuring that long after the war ends, the land will remain deadly. Unlike bullets and bombs, landmines never stop killing. They lie silent and forgotten, waiting years, sometimes generations before claiming their next victim. The cruelest irony? Most landmine victims today are not soldiers, but civilians, children playing in fields or farmers working their land. Despite international efforts to ban them, with over 100 countries signing the Ottawa Treaty, landmines continue to be deployed and stockpiled by Russia, China, the US, and dozens of other states. Some weapons are designed to kill, others are designed to instill sheer terror. The Jagd Commando knife is both. With its three-sided, spiralling blade, this Austrian-engineered masterpiece of brutality is a tactical nightmare for anyone unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end of its devastating power. What sets the Jagd Commando knife apart from conventional combat blades is its lethal geometry. Instead of a straight, slashing edge, this knife features three razor-sharp, spiraled edges that create a unique cutting pattern unlike anything else in modern warfare. The result? Massive, jagged wounds that cannot be stitched shut, leading to catastrophic internal bleeding and often requiring amputation to save the victim's life. The knife is not a standard issue weapon for soldiers or law enforcement. It is a tool of surgical brutality, designed for elite operatives, assassins and special forces who operate in the shadows. But despite its devastating efficiency, the Jagd Commando knife is widely considered too cruel for conventional warfare. While not officially banned, most military and law enforcement agencies refuse to use it, citing ethical concerns and excessive brutality. The inability to close wounds violates basic humanitarian norms, making it one of the most feared and controversial edge weapons ever created. Have you ever heard of active denial system? Designed as a non-lethal crowd measure, the so-called heat ray exploits millimeter wave technology to instantly scorch human skin, forcing those in its path to flee in agonizing pain. While marketed as a safer alternative to lethal force, the active denial system demonstrates how modern militaries have weaponized discomfort, turning invisible waves into a form of psychological and physical torment. Deployed briefly in Afghanistan in 2010, the weapon was quietly withdrawn before ever being used in combat. However, its potential applications for crowd suppression, perimeter security, and even prison control remain chillingly relevant. The Los Angeles Sheriff Department once considered deploying it against inmates, a stark reminder that the battlefield is not the only place where such technology could be used. The active denial system is mounted on vehicles and, in theory, could be deployed in urban warfare scenarios where its ability to scatter rioters, insurgents, or even peaceful protesters could be weaponized. The active denial system beam penetrates just 0.4 millimeters into human skin, causing an unbearable burning sensation akin to being set on fire. Pain strikes within milliseconds, and no subject has ever endured it for more than 5 seconds. While proponents argue that it leaves no lasting damage, cases of second-degree burns and the potential for misuse raise serious ethical concerns. With reports of Russia and China developing their own versions, this futuristic weapon may signal a new era of invisible, excruciating battlefield deterrence, ones that don't kill, but still break their victims in unimaginable ways. Sound is often considered a tool for communication, but in modern warfare and law enforcement, it has been transformed into a weapon of pain and disorientation. The long-range acoustic device, or shortly LRAD, often referred to as a sound cannon, is a powerful sonic weapon capable of emitting deafening, high-frequency blasts at up to 160 decibels, louder than a jet engine at takeoff. Marketed as a tool for crowd control, perimeter security, and naval defense, the LRAD has been deployed across military and police forces worldwide, blurring the line between non-lethal deterrence and psychological warfare. Originally developed in response to the 2000 terrorist attacks on the USS Cole, LRAD were intended for naval use, allowing warships to send commands and warnings over distances of more than 3,000 meters. However, this technology has since expanded into urban riot control, border enforcement, and even emergency evacuation warnings. its most controversial application lies in police responses to protests, where its alert mode emits a piercing between 2,000 and 4,000 Hz blast, a frequency at which human hearing is most sensitive. Protesters have reported nausea, migraines, temporary blindness, and permanent hearing loss after exposure, with cases of lawsuits challenging its use as an excessive force measure. The LRAD's ability to target individuals in a narrow beam of sound makes escape nearly impossible, and its intensity can cause lasting damage within seconds. While its manufacturers claim it's primarily for communication, its growing misuse and civilian suppression has raised alarm over the increasing militarization of law enforcement. Unlike bullets or tear gas, the LRAD leaves no visible wounds, yet its effect can be permanently life-altering. Few weapons in human history have carried the sheer destructive power and moral weight of the nuclear bombs Little Boy and Fat Man. Dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, these bombs instantly incinerated tens of thousands of people, obliterating entire cities and ushering the world into an atomic age. In a matter of seconds, the full force of 15,000 and 20,000 tons of TNT was unleashed, reducing everything within the blast radius to ashes, twisted steel, and charred remains. Little Boy, the first bomb, was a gun-type uranium device detonated over Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. With an explosion radius of over a kilometre, the bomb's detonation created a mushroom cloud that climbed miles into the sky. Within seconds, over 66,000 people were killed, many vaporized instantly, and their shadows burned into walls. Radiation poisoning would claim thousands more in the following months and years as survivors suffered from agonizing burns, leukemia, and organ failure. 3 days later, Fat Man, a plutonium implosion bomb, was dropped on Nagasaki. Though more powerful than Little Boy, geography spared Nagasaki from even greater catastrophe. Yet over 40,000 lives were lost instantly, with thousands more succumbing to radiation sickness. The horrific aftermath of these attacks forced Japan's surrender, ending World War II, but leaving a lasting legacy of devastation, suffering, and moral reckoning. The birth of the atomic bomb was also the birth of a new, terrifying era. In the decades that followed, humanity lived under the shadow of nuclear annihilation, knowing that what had happened to Hiroshima and Nagasaki would happen again, on an even larger scale. It looked like an ordinary umbrella, innocent and unassuming, just another accessory on a rainy London day. But in reality, it was one of the most infamous assassination tools of the Cold War, a deceptively lethal weapon that fired microscopic poison pellets into its target. This was the Bulgarian umbrella, a device designed not for shelter, but for silent, undetectable murder. On September 7, 1978, Bulgarian dissident and journalist Georgy Markov was walking across Waterloo Bridge when he felt a sudden sting on his thigh. A stranger had bumped into him, muttered an apology, and disappeared into the crowd. Within hours, Markov developed a high fever, and within 4 days, he was dead. His body revealed a chilling discovery: a tiny platinum iridium pellet embedded in his leg, coated with the deadly toxin ricin. The poison had no antidote, and Markov's fate was sealed the moment the umbrella struck. This wasn't an isolated incident. Weeks earlier, another Bulgarian exile, Vladimir Kostov, survived a nearly identical attack in Paris. Both cases bore the hallmarks of KGB involvement, with Bulgaria's secret police allegedly working in cold-blooded coordination with Soviet intelligence. The umbrella gun, a masterpiece of espionage engineering, could fire poison-filled micropellets into its victim without a sound, making it the perfect tool for covert political assassinations. The Bulgarian umbrella became a symbol of Cold War paranoia and state-sponsored murder, proving that the deadliest weapons aren't always the loudest. No bullets, no explosions, just a single jab, a whisper of pain, and death lurking in the bloodstream. After everything, it's clear that some weapons are truly horrifying, even if they don't look it. Designed to cripple, terrorize, and destroy, they redefine the meaning of warfare and suffering. As we move forward into an age of advancing military technology, one question haunts us: what new horrors will tomorrow bring? Which of these weapons do you think is the most terrifying? Let us know in the comments.